The dust of Missouri settled on worn leather boots. 47 men stood in absolute silence. Not a horse moved, not a man breathed. Because William Anderson, Bloody Bill Anderson, the most feared guerrilla in the Confederate States, was staring at a wet stain spreading across the toe of his right boot. Spit. A Kansas Jayhawker had just spit on his boots, in front of his men, in front of witnesses. And then he had said the word, coward. What happened in the next 11 seconds would become legend in Missouri. A story passed down through generations, a moment that defined who Bloody Bill Anderson truly was. But here is what most people miss about this story. The Jayhawker was not some random soldier looking for trouble. He had a reason for that insult. For a very specific reason. He knew something about Bill's sister. We will come back to that because those 11 seconds will make no sense until you understand what happened 18 months earlier in Kansas City to a 14-year-old girl named Josephine Anderson. The American Civil War was not one war. It was 1,000 small wars fought across farms and forests and towns that no one outside Missouri had ever heard of. But nowhere was the war more personal than on the Kansas-Missouri border. This was not about politics. This was not about slavery. This was about revenge. The Jayhawkers came from Kansas. They called themselves freedom fighters, Union loyalists. But to the people of Missouri, they were raiders, killers, men who burned farms and murdered families and called it patriotism. The bushwhackers came from Missouri. They called themselves defenders, Confederate guerrillas. But to the people of Kansas, they were terrorists, outlaws, men who massacred towns and scalped soldiers and called it justice. Both sides were partially right. Both sides were completely brutal, and caught between them were families like the Andersons. William Anderson was born in 1840 in Hopkins County, Kentucky. His father was a farmer. His mother was quiet and kind. He had 2 sisters, Mary Ellen and Josephine, by all accounts. Bill Anderson was a normal boy. There is no evidence he was violent as a child. No sign of the monster he would become. He worked on farms, he helped his father. He protected his sisters the way any older brother would. In 1857, the family moved to Kansas Territory. Bill was 17. His sister Josephine was 11. For 5 years. They lived in peace, and then the war came. The Anderson family made a mistake that would cost them everything. They lived in Kansas, but their sympathies lay with Missouri, with the South. This was not unusual. Thousands of Kansas families felt the same way. But in 1862, choosing the wrong side meant death. The Jayhawkers came first. Bill's father was killed in a dispute that spring. The exact circumstances are unclear. Some say it was self-defense. Some say murder. What is certain is that Arthur Anderson died, and his family was left vulnerable. Bill was 22 years old. He had a choice: run or fight. He chose to fight. Bill Anderson did not become Bloody Bill overnight. He joined Quantrill's raiders in the summer of 1862. William Clark Quantrill was already legendary. A former schoolteacher turned Confederate guerrilla leader who had organized the most effective irregular fighting force the South had ever seen. Under Quantrill, Bill learned everything: how to ride fast, shoot faster, disappear into the Missouri wilderness before Union cavalry could react. He learned to fight like a ghost, striking without warning and vanishing into smoke. Within months, Bill Anderson had proven himself. He was cool under fire, accurate with a pistol, fearless in a charge. But he was not yet Bloody Bill. He was just a young man fighting a war, a young man with something to protect: his sisters. Mary Ellen and Josephine had stayed in Kansas City after their father died. They were civilians. They were supposed to be safe. They were not safe. In the summer of 1863, the Union Army made a decision that would create a monster. General Thomas Ewing issued what became known as General Order No. 10. Under this order, Union forces were authorized to arrest the female relatives of known Confederate guerrillas. The logic was simple. If you could not catch the bushwhackers, you could capture their families, use them as hostages, force surrender. Josephine Anderson was 14 years old. Mary Ellen Anderson was 19. They were arrested in July 1863. along with dozens of other women, sisters and mothers and wives of Missouri guerrillas. They were taken to Kansas City and imprisoned in a 3-story building on Grand Avenue. Bill Anderson learned of their arrest 2 days later. There was nothing he could do. He was a wanted man. Riding into Kansas City meant death. All he could do was wait and hope and plan. But something was wrong with that building. The building at 1409 Grand Avenue had been condemned before the Union ever moved prisoners inside. It was structurally unsound. The walls were cracking, the foundation was shifting. Local officials had warned that it was dangerous. The Union imprisoned the women there anyway. On August 13, 1863, the building collapsed. 5 women died instantly, including Josephine Anderson. She was 14 years old. Mary Ellen Anderson survived, but her legs were crushed. She would never walk properly again. Union officials claimed it was an accident, a tragic coincidence, bad luck, but witnesses told a different story. They said guards had been seen removing support beams from the basement in the days before the collapse. They said the building had been deliberately weakened. The truth has never been proven either way. But Bill Anderson knew what he believed. Bill Anderson received the news of his sister's death 3 days after the collapse. A survivor described what happened next. He did not scream. He did not cry. He sat very still for a long time. When he finally looked up, something was different in his eyes. Something that had been human was gone. That survivor later testified. His eyes were dead, like looking into 2 holes in the ground. Whatever Bill Anderson had been before that moment, he was not that man anymore. Bill asked for his sister's dress. Someone had saved it from the rubble, torn, bloody, covered in dust. Bill took that dress. He folded it carefully. He placed it in his saddlebag. He would carry it with him every single day for the rest of his life. 1 week after his sister's death, Bill Anderson rode into Lawrence, Kansas with Quantrill's raiders. The Lawrence Massacre, August 21, 1863. 400 guerrillas descended on the town at dawn. What followed was 4 hours of systematic killing. Every man and boy of military age was to be shot. Those were the orders. 164 civilians died that morning. Bill Anderson was at the front of the charge. This was the day Bloody Bill was born, and after Lawrence. Bill Anderson separated from Quantrill. He formed his own band, his own rules, his own methods. He stopped taking prisoners. He started keeping count. The scalps began to appear on his saddle, 1 for every Union soldier killed. Some men said he braided human hair into his horse's reins. Others said he kept a ledger, a book with names and dates and locations. By the summer of 1864, Bill Anderson had 53 scalps on his saddle. Every single one, he said, was for Josephine. There was something else Bill kept. It was not common knowledge. Only a few of his closest men knew. Around his neck, on a leather cord, Bill wore a small locket. Inside the locket was a miniature painting, a portrait of Josephine, 14 years old. Light brown hair, eyes that looked too old for her face. Bill would look at that portrait before every battle. He never spoke of it, but one of his men, a guerrilla named Archie Clement, later described what he saw. Before we hit Centralia, I saw Bill take out that locket. He looked at it for maybe 30 seconds. His lips were moving, but I could not hear what he said. When he put it away and looked at me, he smiled. It was the coldest smile I ever saw on a human face. This detail will matter later. Remember the locket. Remember Josephine's portrait. Because what happened in those 11 seconds? It started when Bill touched that locket. September 1864. Missouri was burning. Union forces had been trying to capture Bill Anderson for over a year. They had sent cavalry, infantry, special units trained specifically to hunt guerrillas. They had all failed. Bill was a ghost. He struck without warning. He killed without mercy. And he disappeared into the Missouri hills before anyone could react. But even ghosts need supplies that September. Bill and his men rode toward the Missouri River. They needed ammunition, horses, information. And they needed to remind Missouri who controlled these roads. The town was small, maybe 50 buildings, a general store, a blacksmith, a saloon that served as the unofficial meeting point for anyone passing through. Bill Anderson rode in with 30 of his men. They were not hiding. They wore Confederate gray openly. Their pistols were visible, the scalps on Bill's saddle. They were visible too. The people of Missouri knew who he was. Most of them supported him. To them, Bill Anderson was not a monster. He was a defender, a man who fought back when the Union burned their farms and killed their families. But not everyone in that town was from Missouri. The Jayhawker was sitting at a table outside the saloon when Bill arrived. He was tall, lean, maybe 30 years old. He wore the remnants of a Union uniform, but it was faded and torn. He was not regular Army. He was a Redleg. The Redlegs were a Kansas militia unit known for brutality that shocked even other Union soldiers. They raided Missouri farms, they killed civilians, they took what they wanted and burned what they did not. This particular Redleg had been in Missouri for 3 weeks, scouting, watching, waiting for Confederate activity to report. He recognized Bill Anderson immediately. Anyone would. The scalps, the cold eyes, the way every man in the party looked to him like he was something more than human. The Redleg should have stayed silent. He should have let Bill pass. But there was something else driving him, something Bill did not know yet. The Redleg had been in Kansas City the day the building collapsed. He had been one of the guards. Bill dismounted in front of the general store. His men spread out. Some went to the blacksmith, some to the saloon. Others watched the roads. Standard procedure for a guerrilla band in hostile territory. Bill walked toward the store. The Redleg stood up. Bill, one of his men said, a warning tone in his voice. But Bill had already seen him. Those cold, dead eyes moved to the Redleg's face, to his uniform, to the red leather leggings that gave the Redlegs their name. Neither man spoke. For maybe 10 seconds. They just stared at each other. The entire town went silent. People backed away from windows. Children were pulled indoors. Everyone knew what was about to happen, or thought they knew. The Redleg took 3 steps forward. He stopped about 6 feet from Bill Anderson. And then, slowly, deliberately, he spit. The saliva hit Bill's right boot. It spread across the leather like a stain of contempt. Bill did not move. His men did not move. The Redleg smiled, and then he spoke the word that would kill him. Coward. His voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. They say you're the most dangerous man in Missouri, he said. They say you killed 100 men, scalped them like an Indian savage. He paused. But I know what you really are. You're a coward who hides in the woods and murders sleeping men. You're not a soldier. You're a dog. Bill still did not move. And here is where the story becomes legend. Because the Redleg said 3 more words. 3 words that changed everything. Remember those 3 words from the premise. We are about to find out what they were. Bill's hand moved, not to his pistol. Everyone expected him to draw, to shoot the Redleg where he stood. That was what Bloody Bill Anderson did. That was his reputation. But his hand did not go to his holster. It went to his belt, to a leather sheath behind his hip, to a Bowie knife with a 12-inch blade. The 3 words the Redleg spoke. I know her. That was all he said. I know her. And Bill Anderson understood immediately what he meant. Josephine. This man had known his sister. This man had been there, at the building, at Grand Avenue. Bill's jaw tightened. His eyes, those dead, empty eyes, flickered with something that had not been there in months. Rage. Pure. Focused. Incandescent rage. What happened next took exactly 11 seconds. Witnesses would later recount every moment. Their accounts were remarkably consistent. This was not something anyone forgot. Second 1. Bill's hand closed around the knife handle. Second 2. He drew it from the sheath. The blade caught the afternoon sun. Second 3. The Redleg realized his mistake. His hand moved toward his own pistol. Too slow. Second 4. Bill stepped forward. 1 long stride. Second 5. The knife entered the Redleg's chest, just below the sternum, angled upward. Second 6. Bill's left hand grabbed the Redleg's shoulder, holding him upright. Second 7. He twisted the blade. Second 8. The redleg's mouth opened. No sound came out. His eyes were wide with something beyond fear. Second 9. Bill pulled the knife free. Second 10. The redleg collapsed. His body hit the Missouri dust. Second 11. Bill Anderson wiped the blade on his trouser leg. He looked down at the dying man, and he spoke the only words he would say. She was 14. The redleg was not dead yet. He lay in the dust, blood spreading beneath him. But he was still breathing, still looking up at Bill Anderson with eyes that were starting to lose focus. Bill crouched down beside him. No one else moved. "You want to know why they call me Bloody Bill?" he said quietly. His voice was almost gentle. It was the voice of a man explaining something simple to a child. He reached into his shirt, pulled out the locket, opened it, showed the dying man the portrait of Josephine Anderson. "She was my sister," Bill said. "She was 14 years old, and she died in that building. The one you helped guard, the one you helped destroy." The redleg tried to speak. His lips moved. No words came out. Bill watched him die. It took another 4 minutes. When it was over, Bill stood up. He looked at his men. He looked at the townspeople watching from windows and doorways. He did not need to explain. Everyone understood. But the story does not end with the redleg's death, because what Bill Anderson did next, what happened to the body, that was never officially recorded in any military report. The Union would later deny it happened at all. But witnesses remembered. Bill turned to Archie Clement. Archie was 17 years old, small, vicious, completely loyal to Bill Anderson. "The horse," Bill said. Archie understood immediately, within minutes. The redleg's body was tied to a horse, not riding it, draped across the saddle, face down, arms hanging. Bill took a piece of paper from the general store. He wrote something on it. He pinned the paper to the redleg's back. Then he slapped the horse, sent it walking toward the road that led to Kansas. The paper said 2 words, Kansas City, nothing else. It was a message, not just to the Union, not just to the Jayhawkers, to everyone. Bill Anderson remembered. Bill Anderson knew who was responsible, and Bill Anderson would find them, one by one, until the debt was paid. There was a young man watching that day. He was 19 years old, lean and blue-eyed and already developing a reputation as one of the best shots in Bill's band. His name was Jesse James. Jesse would later become the most famous outlaw in American history. He would rob banks and trains. He would become a legend that outlasted the Civil War by decades. But in September 1864, he was just a young guerrilla learning from the best, and what he learned that day, he never forgot. Years later, when Jesse was asked about his time with Bloody Bill Anderson, he would describe this moment. "I saw a lot of killing in the war," Jesse said. "I did my share, but that day watching Bill with that Jayhawker, I understood something. This was not about the war, not really. This was about something deeper, something personal." He paused. Bill was not killing soldiers. He was killing the men who killed his sister, every single one he could find, and he would not stop until he ran out of bullets or they ran out of men. That was the lesson Jesse James learned. Vengeance was patient. Vengeance was focused. Vengeance did not end until the job was done. It was a lesson that would shape American history for the next 20 years. News of what happened in that Missouri town spread quickly to the Confederate guerrillas. Bill Anderson became even more legendary. This was a man who would not draw a pistol on an insult. He would use his knife. He would look you in the eye while he did it. He would take his time. To the Union forces, Bill Anderson became an obsession. General Thomas Ewing, the same man who had ordered the imprisonment of the women in Kansas City, put a bounty on Bill's head, $5,000, dead or alive. It was an enormous sum, more than most soldiers would earn in 10 years. It did not matter. Bill Anderson continued to ride. 6 weeks after the incident with the redleg, Bill Anderson led his men into the town of Centralia, Missouri. It was September 27, 1864. What happened there would become one of the most infamous events of the entire Civil War. But that is not this story. This story is about 11 seconds, about a Jayhawker who spit on the wrong man's boots, about the moment when words became weapons and weapons became legend. One of Bill's men later tried to explain what he saw in Bill's eyes during those 11 seconds. His name was George Todd. He had ridden with guerrillas since the war began. He had seen men kill in rage. He had seen men kill in cold blood. He had seen every kind of killing the border war produced. But what he saw in Bill Anderson that day was different. It was not rage, Todd said. That is what people do not understand. Bill was not angry, he was precise, like a man doing a job he had done 1,000 times, like a craftsman. Todd paused, choosing his words carefully. Most men kill because they have to, or because they are scared, or because the blood is up and they cannot stop themselves. Bill killed because it was necessary. Every death was a payment toward a debt that could never be satisfied. He shook his head. I saw a lot of men die in that war. I killed my share. But Bill Anderson, he was different. He was already dead inside. What we saw walking around, that was not really Bill anymore. That was something else, something the Union created when they killed his sister. There is a question that historians still debate. What if the building in Kansas City had not collapsed? What if Josephine Anderson had lived? Would Bloody Bill have existed at all? Some argue that Bill was always violent, that the war simply revealed what was already inside him, that Josephine's death was an excuse, not a cause. Others argue that Bill Anderson was a normal young man until August 1863, that every atrocity he committed, every scalp, every mutilation, was a direct response to what was done to his family. The truth is probably somewhere in between. War changes men, loss changes men. The Missouri border war was particularly brutal, particularly personal, particularly endless. Bill Anderson was both a product of that war and a force that shaped it. But one thing is certain, after August 1863, there was no going back. The redleg who spit on Bill's boots was never officially identified. Union records do not mention him. No name, no unit designation, nothing. But local histories tell a different story, according to witnesses. The man was named Thomas Caldwell. He was 31 years old. He had been stationed in Kansas City as a prison guard. He had been reassigned to scouting duty after the building collapse. Whether he actually helped weaken the building's foundation, or whether he was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, is unknown. What is known is that he recognized Bill Anderson, and Bill Anderson recognized what he represented. One detail has puzzled historians for over a century. Why did the redleg speak? He knew who Bill Anderson was. He knew the reputation. He had to know that insulting a man with 53 scalps on his saddle was not likely to end well. Some suggest he was drunk. Others suggest he was suicidal. But the most likely explanation, according to those who studied the Missouri border war, is something simpler: contempt. The Jayhawkers genuinely believed they were the righteous side. They believed the bushwhackers were criminals and terrorists. They believed that a Union man, even surrounded by enemies and had moral authority, the redleg probably thought Bill would not act, not in a town full of witnesses, not in broad daylight, not over words. He was wrong. There is one more thing you should know about those 11 seconds. One of Bill's men, a guerrilla whose name has been lost to history, almost intervened. He later described what happened. When the Jayhawker spit, I almost stepped forward, almost put myself between them. I do not know why. Maybe I thought Bill would just shoot him. Maybe I thought we should question him first, find out what he knew. The guerrilla paused, but then I saw Bill's eyes, and I stopped, because I realized something. This was not my place to interfere. This was something between Bill and that man, something that had started in Kansas City, something that would only end one way. He shook his head. I have thought about it many times since. What if I had stopped him? What if I had given that Jayhawker a chance to explain himself? He looked away, but here is the truth. It would not have mattered. Bill was going to kill that man the moment he recognized the uniform, the spit, the words. They just made it personal. They made it mean something. The body was found 3 days later. A Union patrol discovered the horse wandering along a road near the Kansas border. The redleg's corpse was still tied across the saddle. The note was still pinned to his back: Kansas City. Union commanders were furious. This was not just a killing. This was a message, a declaration, proof that Bill Anderson could strike anywhere, at anyone, at any time. The search for Bill intensified. More cavalry units were assigned, more scouts deployed, more bounties offered. It would take another 6 weeks, but eventually, the Union would find Bill Anderson, and when they did, they would show him no more mercy than he had shown that redleg in the Missouri dust. October 26, 1864. Bill Anderson and his men were ambushed near Albany, Missouri. It happened fast. A Union force of 300 soldiers had been waiting. They had intelligence on Bill's movements. They knew where he would be. When Bill charged, as he always charged, they were ready. 2 bullets struck Bill Anderson, one in the head. He was dead before he hit the ground. He was 24 years old. The Union soldiers did not bury Bill Anderson. They took his body to Richmond, Missouri. They propped it up in the courthouse square. They tied a rope around his neck and displayed him like a trophy. For 3 days, Union soldiers and loyal citizens came to see the body of bloody Bill Anderson. Some spit on him. Some stabbed the corpse with knives. Women came with scissors to cut pieces from his clothes, souvenirs from the monster. On the 3rd day, someone cut off his head. There are conflicting reports about what happened to it afterward. Some say it was pickled and displayed. Others say it was destroyed. The truth has been lost. But even in death, Bill Anderson was not finished, because the men he had trained, the young guerrillas who had ridden with him, they survived. Jesse James was among them. Frank James was among them. Cole Younger was among them. These young men took everything Bill Anderson had taught them, and they carried it into peacetime. Bank robberies, train robberies, shootouts with lawmen, legends that would define the American West for the next 2 decades. Every time Jesse James drew a pistol, every time he looked a man in the eye before pulling the trigger, he was using lessons learned from bloody Bill Anderson, including what he learned that day in Missouri, when a Jayhawker spit on Bill's boots and regretted it for exactly 11 seconds. There is a moral question at the heart of this story. Was Bill Anderson a monster? The Union said yes, absolutely, unequivocally, he was a terrorist, a murderer, a man who scalped soldiers and braided their hair into his horse's mane. The Confederacy said no, he was a hero, a defender, a man who fought back against Union atrocities with the only language they understood, the truth. The truth is complicated. Bill Anderson did terrible things, this is undeniable. Centralia alone, 23 unarmed soldiers executed, is enough to condemn him by any standard. But Bill Anderson was also created by terrible things: the death of his father, the imprisonment of his sisters, the collapse of that building that killed Josephine. We cannot excuse what he became, but we can understand why he became it. 160 years later, people still argue about Bill Anderson. Was he justified? Was he insane? Was he a product of his times? Or a monster who would have emerged regardless? The debate has no resolution, but that Jayhawker in Missouri, the one who spit on Bill's boots, he found out the answer the hard way, in 11 seconds, with a 12-inch blade, in the dust of a Missouri afternoon. Let me tell you more about what the witnesses saw, because the 11 seconds are only part of the story. What happened before? What happened after? That is where the truth really lives. The morning of that encounter started like any other raid. Bill Anderson woke before dawn. His men were already stirring, checking pistols, saddling horses. There was a routine to guerrilla life, a rhythm that kept men alive. Bill walked to the creek behind their camp. He splashed water on his face and then, as he did every morning, he took out the locket. Josephine stared up at him from the small portrait. Forever 14, forever frozen in that moment, before everything changed. Bill touched the image with his thumb. He did not speak. He never spoke to the portrait. That was a fiction created by people who did not know him. Bill Anderson was not sentimental. He was not soft. He carried that locket for one reason and one reason only: to remind himself why he was doing this. Every morning, every day, for 18 months. The locket went back inside his shirt. Bill went to find his horse. There were 32 men in Bill's band that day. Not all of them would survive the year. Archie Clement was there, the small vicious teenager who worshipped Bill like an older brother. Archie would go on to become famous in his own right, a terror to Union forces even after the war ended. Jesse James was there, 19 years old, already developing the cold precision that would make him a legend. Jesse rarely spoke. He watched. He learned. He waited. Frank James was there too, older than Jesse by 4 years, more cautious, more thoughtful. Frank understood that the war could not last forever. He was already thinking about what came next, and there were others, names that history has mostly forgotten. Men who rode with Bloody Bill for their own reasons, revenge for burned farms, revenge for killed fathers, revenge for sisters and mothers and wives taken by Union forces. Bill Anderson understood them all, because Bill Anderson was them all. The ride to the town took 3 hours. They moved carefully through Missouri timber, watching for Union patrols, listening for the sound of cavalry. Bill rode at the front. He always rode at the front. Some guerrilla leaders stayed in the middle of their columns, protected, safe. But Bill believed a leader should be first into danger, first to face whatever was waiting. It was this fearlessness that inspired his men, and this fearlessness that would eventually kill him. When they reached the edge of town, Bill raised his hand. The column stopped. Bill studied the buildings, the streets, the people moving between them. He was looking for Union uniforms. He was looking for horses that did not belong. He was looking for anything that suggested a trap. Archie Clement rode up beside him. "Looks quiet," Archie said. Bill nodded slowly. "Too quiet, maybe." They sat there for maybe 5 minutes, watching, waiting. Bill was patient when patience was needed. He had not survived 3 years of guerrilla warfare by rushing into unknown situations. Finally, he seemed satisfied. "We go in," he said. "Standard approach. Half to the blacksmith, half to the store. Watch the roads." He looked at his men. "And stay close to your horses." The first person to notice them was a boy, maybe 12 years old. He was carrying water buckets from the town well. He dropped both buckets when he saw the riders. Bill Anderson. He said the name like it was a curse or a prayer, maybe both. The boy ran. Bill watched him go. He did not smile. He did not react. He just filed the information away. The town knew he was here now. That was fine. That was expected. Bill dismounted in front of the general store. He handed his reins to one of his men, and he walked inside. The general store was dark after the brightness of the Missouri sun. Bill stood in the doorway for a moment, letting his eyes adjust. The store owner was behind the counter, an older man, gray beard, hands that trembled slightly. "Mr. Anderson," the man said. Bill nodded. "I need ammunition, powder. Lead shot if you have it." The store owner hesitated. We had a Union patrol through here last week. They took most of what I had." Bill looked at him, the silence stretched. Finally, Bill spoke. "Check the back room." The store owner swallowed. "Yes, sir." He disappeared through a curtain behind the counter. Bill knew there was more ammunition. There was always more ammunition. Store owners in Missouri learned early to hide their supplies from both sides. The Union took what they wanted as war requisition. The Confederates took what they wanted as war requisition. The difference was, Bill paid. Always. He left money on the counter for everything he took. Union commanders called it theater. They said Bill was buying loyalty with stolen gold. Maybe they were right, but Missouri farmers remembered who paid and who did not. Bill was still in the store when the commotion started outside. He heard voices first, raised, angry. Then one of his men appeared in the doorway. "Bill, there is a Jayhawker." Bill finished loading ammunition into his saddlebag. Just one. Bill nodded. He walked out of the store, into the Missouri sunlight, into the last 11 seconds of a man's life. The red leg was not what Bill expected. Most Jayhawkers were young, angry, eager to prove themselves. This man was older, calmer. He sat at his table outside the saloon like he owned the town, like he was not surrounded by 30 Confederate guerrillas. That alone should have warned Bill. A man that calm in that situation, either he was stupid or he knew something the others did not. He was not stupid. Bill walked toward the red leg. His men parted to let him through. The townspeople were already backing away, clearing the street, finding cover. Bill stopped about 10 feet from the table. The redleg looked up at him and smiled. That smile would haunt the survivors for years, because it was the smile of a man who had already decided to die, a man who wanted to say something, do something, before he went, a man who wanted his death to mean something. "You are a long way from Kansas," Bill said. His voice was flat, conversational, the voice of a man discussing the weather. The redleg stood up. "And you are a long way from human." Bill did not react. Something flickered in his eyes, but he did not react. "I have heard stories about you," the redleg continued. "The scalps, the mutilations, the way you execute prisoners." He stepped closer. "They say you are the most dangerous man in Missouri." Bill said nothing. The redleg kept walking. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. He stopped right in front of Bill, maybe 3 feet of Missouri dust between them, and he spit. The saliva landed on Bill's right boot. Everyone saw it. Everyone heard it hit the leather. The silence that followed was absolute. No wind, no birds, no horses moving, just silence. And then the redleg spoke. "Coward," he said. The word hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. "They say you are the most dangerous man in Missouri. They say you killed 100 men, scalped them like an Indian savage." He paused. "But I know what you really are. You are a coward who hides in the woods and murders sleeping men. You are not a soldier. You are a dog." Bill still had not moved. His hand was not near his pistol. His expression had not changed. The redleg leaned closer. "And I know her. Those 3 words, I know her. They changed everything." Bill's eyes, those dead empty holes, suddenly sparked. Just for a moment. Just long enough. The redleg saw it. He smiled again. Because now he knew his death would hurt. Now he knew Bill Anderson understood exactly who he was. Josephine. The name echoed in Bill's mind. This man had known his sister, had seen her, had been there when she died. Memories flooded back. The letter informing him of the arrest, the days of helpless waiting, the news of the collapse, the dress, torn and bloody, placed in his hands by a survivor. All of it, in a single heartbeat. And then, nothing. Bill's mind went quiet, cold, clear, the way it always did before a kill. His hand moved, not to his pistol, to the knife. The Bowie knife with the 12-inch blade that he had carried since Kentucky, the knife that had been his father's, the knife that had ended more lives than most men could count. 11 seconds. The witnesses counted later. 11 seconds from the moment Bill drew the knife to the moment the redleg collapsed. But to the people watching, it felt like hours. It felt like time itself had slowed down, like Missouri was holding its breath to watch what happened next. Bill stepped forward. 1 stride. The knife entered below the sternum. Bill's left hand grabbed the redleg's shoulder, held him upright, twisted the blade, pulled it free. The redleg fell. Bill stood over him. She was 14. That was all he said. She was 14. The redleg lay in the dust. Blood pooled beneath him. He was still alive, still conscious, still looking up at Bill Anderson with eyes that were starting to cloud. Bill crouched beside him. He took out the locket, opened it, showed the dying man the portrait of Josephine Anderson. "She was my sister. She was 14 years old, and she died in that building. The one you helped guard, the one you helped destroy." The redleg's lips moved. He was trying to speak. Bill leaned closer. What was that? The redleg whispered something. Only Bill heard it. Whatever it was. Bill's expression did not change. He closed the locket. He stood up. He watched the man die. Nobody knows what the redleg whispered in those final moments. Bill never told anyone. Historians have speculated for a century and a half. Some believe he apologized. Some believe he cursed. Some believe he said something about Josephine. Some final piece of information that Bill took to his grave. The truth died with them both. But whatever was said, Bill's reaction was telling. He showed no emotion, no satisfaction, no closure. Just the same cold emptiness that had defined him since August 1863. Killing this man changed nothing. The debt was too large to be paid by one death, or 100 deaths, or 1,000. When the redlegs stopped breathing, Bill turned to his men. His face was calm. His hands were steady. The knife was back in its sheath. "The horse," he said to Archie Clement. 20 minutes later, the redleg's body was riding toward Kansas, a message pinned to its back, Kansas City, 2 words that said everything. The town was silent as Bill's men prepared to leave. No one spoke to them. No one made eye contact. These people had seen something they would never forget. Not the violence itself. Violence was common in Missouri. You could not live on the border without seeing death. But the way Bill had killed, the precision, the control, the complete absence of rage, that was different. That was terrifying in a way that hot-blooded killing could never be. Bill mounted his horse. He looked at the bloodstain in the dust. Already. Flies were gathering. "Let us move," he said. The column formed up, 32 men, 32 horses, moving through Missouri like ghosts. By nightfall, they would be 15 miles away by morning. The Union would have no idea where they had gone. 6 weeks later, everything would end. October 26th, 1864. The ambush near Albany, Missouri. 300 Union soldiers waiting. Bill Anderson charging at the front of his men, 2 bullets in his chest and head. 24 years old, dead before he hit the ground. The Union soldiers took their time with his body. They stripped off his clothes, they cut off pieces of his scalp, collecting the same trophies he had collected from them. They photographed him. The image still exists today. Bill Anderson, propped up in death. Eyes closed, face slack. The monster finally silent. They displayed him in Richmond for 3 days. People came from miles around to see, to spit on him, to cut pieces from his body, to take revenge on the corpse that the living man had never allowed. But Bill Anderson's legacy was not finished, because the men he trained, they survived. Jesse James, Frank James, Cole Younger, Archie Clement. These men took everything Bill taught them into the peacetime that followed. They robbed banks, they robbed trains, they shot lawmen who tried to stop them. For 20 years after the Civil War, the American West was shaped by men who learned their trade riding with bloody Bill Anderson. Jesse James became the most famous outlaw in American history. His story has been told 1,000 times, books, movies, television shows. His name became synonymous with the American West, but few of those stories mention where Jesse learned. Few mention the lessons he absorbed during those months riding with Bill. How to be ruthless, how to be patient, how to look a man in the eye and pull the trigger without hesitation. Jesse James did not invent that cold precision. He learned it. From a man who carried his dead sister's portrait in a locket around his neck. From a man who killed a Jayhawker in 11 seconds for an insult. From bloody Bill Anderson. Frank James, Jesse's older brother, was different. Frank was educated, thoughtful. He read Shakespeare and quoted poetry. After the war, he would struggle with what they had done. But during the war, Frank was as ruthless as any of them. He once said something about Bill Anderson that has stayed with historians. "Bill was not crazy," Frank said years later. "People always said he was insane, that the grief drove him mad. But I rode with him. I watched him think. I saw him plan." Frank paused. Bill was not crazy. He was focused. Every death served a purpose. Every action had a reason. Most men kill in anger. Bill killed with precision. That is far more frightening than madness. Cole Younger became an outlaw legend too. He rode with Jesse and Frank for years after the war. He robbed banks across the Midwest. He shot his way out of ambushes that should have killed him. Cole was captured in 1876 during the famous Northfield raid. He spent 25 years in prison. When he got out, he was an old man, but he still remembered riding with Bill Anderson. He still remembered that day in Missouri. "The Jayhawker," Cole said during an interview in 1903. "I was there, I saw the whole thing. Bill did not even draw his pistol. He shook his head. Most men, when they are that angry, they get sloppy, they shake, they miss. Bill was not like that. He was calm as a preacher giving a sermon. That Jayhawker was dead the moment he opened his mouth. He just did not know it yet. Archie Clement was perhaps the most directly influenced by Bill Anderson. Small and vicious, Archie worshipped Bill like an older brother. He adopted Bill's methods, his coldness, his willingness to do whatever was necessary. After the war, Archie became a political enforcer in Missouri. He intimidated voters. He threatened officials. He killed men who stood in the way of Confederate interests. In 1866, Archie Clement was shot and killed by Union militia in Lexington, Missouri. He was 21 years old. He never got the chance to become an outlaw legend like Jesse, but those who knew him said he was the most like Bill. The same dead eyes, the same cold precision, the same complete absence of mercy. The story of the Jayhawker and the boots was told for generations in Missouri. It became legend. Fathers told their sons, grandfathers told their grandchildren. The details shifted over time, as they always do with oral history. Some versions say the Jayhawker drew first. Some versions say Bill gave him a chance to apologize. Some versions say the whole thing took 30 seconds, or 3 minutes, or an hour. But the core remained the same. A man insulted Bloody Bill Anderson, and he died for it, in seconds. Modern historians have tried to verify the story. Union records do not mention it. No official report. No name for the redleg. Nothing. Confederate records are similarly silent, but the local histories are consistent. Witnesses who were children that day. They told the story to newspapers 50 years later. The details matched. A Jayhawker. Kansas City. Spit. Coward. 11 seconds. The body sent back to Kansas as a message. Some things are too consistent to be fiction. There is a cemetery in Richmond, Missouri. Bill Anderson is buried there. The grave is modest, a small headstone, no grand monument. For decades, the grave was unmarked. No one wanted to admit they knew where he was buried. No one wanted to be associated with the most feared guerrilla in Missouri history. But eventually, a headstone appeared. William T. Anderson, 1840-1864. That is all it says. The building in Kansas City, where Josephine died, it is gone now. The site was cleared. Other buildings went up. The city expanded. There is no marker, no memorial, no acknowledgement that 5 women died there in 1863. Just concrete and traffic and people who have no idea what happened on that spot. Sometimes, history is buried so deep that even the location forgets. But the legacy of Bloody Bill Anderson cannot be buried. Every Western movie with a cold-eyed outlaw, that is Bill's legacy. Every story of vengeance in the Old West, that is Bill's legacy. The image of the gunfighter who shows no mercy, who kills without hesitation, who operates by a code that civilized society cannot understand. That image was born in Missouri, in the chaos of the Civil War, in the grief of a young man who lost his sister. Was Bill Anderson a hero? No, not by any reasonable definition. He killed unarmed men. He scalped bodies. He committed atrocities that would be war crimes under modern law. Was Bill Anderson a villain? Yes. Also yes. But he was a villain created by villains. The men who imprisoned his sisters. The men who allowed that building to collapse. The men who displayed their deaths as a warning to other Confederate families. They created Bloody Bill Anderson. They unleashed something they could not control. They paid the price. There is a question I want to leave you with. If your sister died at 14, crushed to death in a building that should never have held prisoners, killed by men who were supposed to protect civilians, what would you become? Where is the line between grief and madness, between justice and vengeance? Between fighting back and becoming the very monster you oppose? Bill Anderson crossed that line, but the line itself, that exists in all of us, in the right circumstances, with the right losses. Anyone might cross it. That is the most terrifying thing about this story. Not what Bill Anderson was, but what any of us might become. The Missouri sun set that afternoon. The dust settled over blood. A horse carried its message toward Kansas, and Bloody Bill Anderson, the most feared man in Missouri, climbed back on his horse and rode into legend. 11 seconds. That is how long it took to kill a man who spit on his boots. But the truth is that Jayhawker was dead from the moment he put on the uniform, from the moment he took a post in Kansas City, from the moment he became part of the system that killed Josephine Anderson. The spit, the word, the knife. Those were just the formalities. The verdict was decided 18 months earlier, in a collapsing building, in the screams of a 14-year-old girl, in the sound of a young man's humanity dying along with his sister. History does not give us neat answers. It gives us stories. Stories of men who did terrible things for understandable reasons. Stories of vengeance that created more vengeance. Stories of wounds that never healed. Bill Anderson's story is one of those. A young man became a monster. A monster created other monsters. Those monsters shaped a nation, for better or worse. That is the legacy of Bloody Bill Anderson. A legacy that began with a 14-year-old girl and ended with a 12-inch blade in a Missouri afternoon. 11 seconds, 160 years, and we are still trying to understand. If you have watched this far, you have just witnessed one of the darkest chapters of American history. Stories like this, the ones they do not teach in school. Take time to research and tell properly. When you click Super Thanks, you are not just supporting a channel, you are saying, "This history matters." Every contribution helps us uncover more forgotten stories from America's past. Thank you for valuing this work. What truly drove Bill Anderson? Grief or madness? Can any loss justify what he became? If your sister had died in that building, crushed to death at 14 years old by men who were supposed to protect civilians, what would you have done? There is no easy answer. History is not black and white. Sometimes it is blood red. Comment below and tell me, was Bill Anderson a monster or a product of monstrous times? I read every comment, and I want to know what you think. The Missouri sun set over a quiet town that afternoon. The dust eventually settled over the blood. The horse carried its message toward Kansas, and Bloody Bill Anderson, the most feared man in Missouri, climbed back on his horse and rode away. He had 18 more days to live. He did not know it, but he would not have cared, because for Bill Anderson, life had ended 18 months earlier, in Kansas City, in a building on Grand Avenue, when a 14-year-old girl named Josephine took her last breath beneath the rubble. Everything after that, every killing, every scalp, every 11-second reckoning, was just paying down the debt.